The cool thing about the Assyrians is that they left so much writing. It's even been said in one of the books that I read for this video that we know more about the Assyrians than we do about your average Norman peasant. Considering the civilization flourished thousands of years ago, that's pretty incredible. But there's one guy who really stands out from all the sources, not just temple dedications, winning a battle, stuff like that, the usual stuff that gets recorded. We really get a glimpse of the man's life and who he was. That man is King Esarhaddon, the 7th century ruler of Assyria. And this is my super low budget video in honor of that guy. I'm Stefan. I make casual little videos on history, archaeology, anthropology. If that's what you are into, then you know what to do. So Esarhaddon was the youngest son of King Sennacherib, and he was born and raised in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire at that time. Despite being the youngest son, in the year 683 BCE, he was made crown prince or heir to the throne. Naturally, as the youngest son, this involved dismissing the previous heir, his older brother Erdu-Melisi. Something tells me this is not going to end well. The books. Obviously the books tell me it's not going to work out well. That's how I know everything I know about this video. Erdu-Melisi started plotting a coup, but he was discovered by an official who attempted to seek an audience with the king Sennacherib, and thanks to a letter sent to Esarhaddon, we know exactly what happened to this royal official who knew too much. They asked him, "What is your appeal to the king about?" He answered, "It is about Erdu-Melisi." They covered his face with his cloak, as was the custom when meeting the king, and made him stand before Erdu-Melisi himself, saying, "Look, your appeal is being granted. Say it with your own mouth." He said, "Your son Erdu-Melisi will kill you." Needless to say, that was the end of that guy. In 681, their plot came to fruition. Erdu-Melisi and another brother stabbed their father to death. However, brothers being brothers, they couldn't agree on what happened next, and the coronation of Erdu-Melisi was postponed. It never took place. Meanwhile, Esarhaddon, he was out of town, chilling, doing princely things. He managed to raise an army and took the capital Nineveh just 2 months after his father's death. His brothers fled to a neighboring hostile kingdom called Urartu, and this event was so shocking to the whole world that the king of Assyria had been murdered by his own children that it's even mentioned in the Bible. That night, the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and withdrew. He returned to Nineveh and stayed there. One day, while he was worshipping in the temple of his god Nisroch, his son Adramelech and Sharazar killed him with the sword, and they escaped to the land of Ararat, and Esarhaddon, his son, succeeded him as king. Unable to capture his brothers, Esarhaddon made sure they had no supporters left in the empire, and the entire palace guard was dismissed. Now, dismissed in this context probably means executed. The palace guard had conspired to kill the king. They had failed in their only job. Boosh for the chop as well. Now, his father's murder and his brother's betrayal had a profound effect on Esarhaddon, and his paranoia, or perhaps justified fear of being assassinated, is illustrated in this report sent to the temple of Shamash, along with the autopsy of a lamb's liver. Naturally, why wouldn't you send a lamb's liver? Will any of the eunuchs or bearded officials, the king's courtiers, the members of the royal line, senior or junior, or any other relative of the king, or the military officers, recruitment officers, team commanders, the royal guard, personal guards, or the king's charioteers, the keepers of the inner or outer gates, stable attendants, domestic staff, cooks, confectioners, bakers, craftsmen or foreign auxiliaries, or their brothers, sons or nephews, the masters of salt and bread, or anyone who is acquainted with them, be they eunuchs or bearded or any enemy at all, whether by day or night, or in the city or in the country, whether I'm sitting on the royal throne, or chariot or rickshaw, walking, going out or coming in, eating or drinking, dressing or undressing or washing, whether through deceit or guile, or any other means make an uprising and rebellion against Esarhaddon, King of Assyria. Considering the circumstances, your father's been murdered by your brother, I can't really blame him for feeling paranoid. Who doesn't get paranoid from time to time?
Nobody watches my videos.
Not only was he paranoid, he was also frequently ill. He suffered from dizziness, fever, violent fits of vomiting, diarrhea, nosebleeds. Sounds like my life on the German exchange trip. That train to Cologne. Bad times. We actually have one letter that survives from his doctor to the king attempting to reason with him. Why is the table not brought to the king, my lord? Today already for the second day running. Who would stay in the dark much longer than Shamash, the sun god? King of the gods stays in the dark a whole day and night and again 2 days? The king, the lord of the world, is the very image of Shamash. He should keep in the dark for half a day only. Eating bread and drinking wine will soon remove the illness of the king. Good advice is to be heeded. Restlessness, not eating and drinking, disturbs the mind and adds to illness. In this matter, the king should listen to his servant. Although we might sympathize with him now, definitely as a fellow eczema sufferer, the full body rash. Esarhaddon, I feel for you. No steroid cream in 7th century Assyria. But his subjects would have viewed all these diseases as a sign of their god's displeasure with the king. So for a king to be so seriously and consistently ill was a big problem, serious problem. Fortunately for Esarhaddon, the Assyrian civilization had this ritual of the substitute king, which allowed him to take a break from his royal duties. This ritual was originally designed so that when there was a bad omen, like an eclipse, for example, it would allow the king to pretend to not be the king. I'm not the king. No evil spirits come and kill me. And in his place, they'd put some, for want of a better term, chump, who was supposed to absorb all the bad karma. Meanwhile, the king would be in a separate private area of the palace and be referred to as the farmer. After 100 days of dressing as the king, sleeping in his bed, eating his food, doing all the royal duties, the substitute king was executed. This was to, in a way, guarantee his bad luck, that they didn't want this 100-day substitute period to pass by perfectly well. Bad luck, still lurking around ready to strike the king. They guaranteed his bad luck by executing the substitute. Can't fault that logic. That's pretty well thought out, Assyrian Empire. Well thought out, yet horrible. Now, unusually, Esarhaddon performed this ritual at least 4 times that we know of, more than any other king of Assyria. And this was probably only possible because his son, Ashurbanipal, in 672 had also been made crown prince and presumably took on a lot of the roles of the government, considering his dad was so paranoid. His wife had also died. He was distraught about that. Poor Esarhaddon, he really had a tough time of it. Now, despite his paranoia, his bereavement at the loss of his wife, all these things, his reluctance to perform the royal duties, Esarhaddon's Assyria actually conquered Egypt at that time. And it just goes to show the strength, I guess, of the Assyrian bureaucracy, of the Assyrian military, that it could still perform an offensive conquest of a well-established nation without that central authority of the king. So really impressive system you got going on there, Assyria. In 670, Esarhaddon's luck ran out again. I don't know if you could consider him lucky to begin with, but his luck ran out again in the north of his kingdom in what's now Syria, in the town of Haran. This woman fell into an ecstatic state, declaring,
"This is the word of Nusku, the light god. Kingship belongs to Sassy. I shall destroy the name and seed of Sennacherib."
Now, we don't know who Sassy was. Very sassy guy. Jokes. Isn't it mad how a rebellion could be started by one woman and her gibberish? Maybe that's just a ruse, who knows? But this rebellion was serious enough that in 670, Esarhaddon orchestrated another massacre of palace officials. So clearly his paranoia got to the better of him again. The Babylon Chronicles of that year state, "In Assyria, the king killed many of his great ones with the sword." So this is the second time now in his reign that Esarhaddon had massacred a large part of the Syrian bureaucracy. First when he took power to get rid of the conspirators, and now 10, 12 years later when he feels another rebellion is on the way. This was a devastating blow for the Assyrian state. It probably could have coped with the death of Esarhaddon much better than it could of the death of so many palace officials. And the year 670 really marked a high point of the empire. It would not be the same again. The next year, in 669 BCE, Esarhaddon died, apparently of natural causes. And that's all I know about Esarhaddon. I'm sure there's tons more sources out there, tons more things to learn about the guy. He's a really interesting chap. This would not have been possible without the awesome book Ancient Assyria by Carole Radner. And I strongly recommend these are very short introductions by Oxford University Press. If you want to get to know a subject better, like I didn't know a lot about Assyria. This is the first place I turn. Well, that's a lie. The first place I turn is Wikipedia. This is the second place I turn once my curiosity has been piqued. Also shout out to George Contenau. He's been dead over 100 years, but his book Everyday Life in Babylon and Assyria, also good read. That's it. That's all I've got for you. Over here, YouTube is going to pick one of my videos. It's also going to show you my face. You can click on that video to watch it. You can click on my face to subscribe to the channel to see more very casual history videos. That's it. Leave a comment or something. I don't know. See ya.